Since 1876, the Indian Act has structured the relationship between Canada and Indigenous peoples with profound repercussions. And though you've no doubt heard of that act, you may not know much about what's actually in it. And that's where Bob Joseph's new book comes in. It's called 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act, helping Canadians make reconciliation with Indigenous peoples a reality. He is the founder of Indigenous Corporate Training, a firm specializing in cultural relations instruction, and he joins us now for more. Bob, great to meet you. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Great to meet you. Thank you.
This book is as a result, I gather, of an article that you originally wrote and then expanded on, and that article pretty much went viral, right? How many people looked at that?
55,000 in the first month. You know, it's just one of those things where we thought, are we reading the numbers right? Like this is, people were just, sharing, and it was just going
and
crazy.
What did that tell you?
I thought this hit a nerve. You know what? They're interested in this subject. I should really expand on the bullet points is what I should do, because it was just sort of, we'll just keep it high level and sort of a quick description, and yeah. So that was sort of the genesis, if you will.
Let's go through, because we like to go in depth here, let's go through the 21 things. We want to go through them all, and some of them we'll spend more time on than others, obviously, but starting with the Indian Act denied women status. What does that mean?
So the Indian Act was designed to actually assimilate people into the political and economic mainstream of the country. And one of the ways that we thought we would do it is by creating a status Indian system. And the status Indian system basically said that Indian women who married non-Indian men would lose their status, and so would their children. And if you lost your status, that meant you had to leave the reserve. You couldn't live there, and you couldn't be with your whole extended family. Where in the same era, status Indian men who married non-status Indian women who could be from any culture in the world, those women would gain their status, and so would their children.
Clearly a double standard there. Does that still exist to this day?
It's still there. You know what? We fixed it in about 1985. There was an amendment called Bill C-31, and Bill C-31 really was a human rights complaint by Indian women who said, this really discriminates against us and not the men, and so it said that they wouldn't lose their status anymore upon marrying non-Indian men. Their children would gain it, and it would work the same for the men. It allowed for a reinstatement of Indian women. If they'd lost within a generation of the bill, they could go back and be reinstated.
And is that happening?
Some bands were pretty good about it. Yeah, you're one of our people. We're going to put you back on our list. Other bands said, we're not getting any new money from Indigenous and Northern Affairs to look after more people right now. We've got to wait for that to happen. And some bands have fought pretty bitter legal battles to not reinstate. Maybe they're, getting oil and gas revenues. And if you become a member, you can actually, be entitled to a band annuity for oil and gas revenue. So there's a whole range.
The Indian Act, of course, introduced residential schools. Do you think, finally, non-Indigenous Canadians are starting to get a better understanding of the repercussions of that decision?
Yeah, so I've been doing the training now for 20 plus years. And in the early days, I can remember one of the first workshops I ever did. A lady came up to me on the break. She was crying, and it was a break. I said, what's wrong? Is there something, how can I help you? And she said, I can't believe what you're telling me. I don't believe my church would be involved in that. It just sounded so surreal to her that it really upset her. She was actually crying. And I said, I know it's hard to believe, but I'm not, I'm telling you the truth here. I'm not making this stuff up. You can't. And I think as time goes on, you're going to really start to see it more and more as things will start to come out, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and survivors. And certainly since the 94 recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, I see academia, K through 12, colleges, universities, governments, businesses, they've all committed to reconciliation. And it sort of tells you how to do that, get a little bit more information on the history and culture and UNDRIP and those kinds of things.
The Indian Act created reserves. Why?
We needed to put them somewhere until they assimilated. So a reserve is like it sounds. It's reserved for their use and benefit. They don't actually own the land that they use and occupy. It was just a place where we were going to put until they assimilated. Sometimes people confuse those with reservations. We don't really have any except at hotels, airlines, restaurants.
Reservation's an American term.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, if we were in the United States, totally it would be tribes and reservations. But in Canada, it's bands and reserves. And so in the context of assimilation, it's a holding pen. It's a place where they were going to go until they assimilated. So they still don't own the lands they live on or really the houses that they live in. You can ask them, do you own that house? Oh, yeah, it's my house. I've been here forever. But legally, technically speaking, it's banned property and property of Indigenous affairs.
The Indian Act renamed individuals with European names.
Yeah.
Is your name Bob Joseph?
My actual name is Aksumnakwala.
What language is that?
It's Kwakwala, and there's actually a few little dialects inside Kwakwala, but in our traditional language, Aksumnakwala means the point in time when the killer whale breaches the surface. You see the dorsal fin, the first shot of air, and in our language it means returning chief. So my dad stood me up in a potlatch way back in 1982, and my dad's a hereditary chief, which means he inherited his chieftainship from, really, we believe that to be the creator, and so I'll eventually inherit his chieftainship. And so he was standing me up and he gave me this traditional name that would sort of let people know that this is a returning chief, he's going to come back. And so when we see a killer whale port us in front of the village, we really believe it's a returning chief.
So why are you named Bob Joseph?
Well, the Indian agents, so the whole assimilation process, how do you know when that's exactly happened? So we set up this sort of key performance indicator, if I can call it that. And the idea was we need to somehow track when assimilation has occurred. So first, to start off with, we decide we'll legally, racially define them, and then we'll look for ways to unlegally, racially define them. Yeah. And so that was the kickoff. And then so an Indian agent would come around to your community one day, pen and a piece of paper, and they'd say name, and you'd say Aksumnakwala, and they'd say, okay, Bob Joseph it is.
And that's how it happened.
Yeah, and I get asked all the time, are you related to the Josephs over in Squamish or the Josephs over here? There's 605 different First Nations, there's Josephs all over the place. And I always have to tell people, no, I'm not, but I'm pretty sure we had the same Indian agent. So a little bit of Indian affairs humor for you there.
I was going to say, it's okay for me to laugh at that, right?
Oh,
you
totally,
intended that to be a joke. Good,
I
good.
want this to be a safe space, and that's how I do operate. So,
okay.
Yes.
The Indian Act, also, when you talk about the power of the Indian agents, the Indian Act restricted First Nations from leaving the reserve without permission from the Indian agent. What's that about?
Totally. So Canada, again, part of this assimilation policy, we're going to put them there, and we're going to try and keep them there as long as we can. And they would see this land of opportunity out here and want to become a part of it. And so the idea was we'd make them get permission slips so we can actually show you copies of passes that were submitted. If you left for more than 30 days at a time,
that's one of them there, isn't
you could be automatically enfranchised. Yeah, that's one of them there. You could be automatically enfranchised.
And enfranchised meant what?
Lost your status, you became non-status, you had to leave the reserve because those are set aside for the use and benefit of status Indians, not non-status Indians. And so we think about World War II veterans. Some of them went away to fight for God and country, as it were, knowing that they were going to be automatically enfranchised. They went away, fought, came back. The Indian agent said, oh, you left for too long, you're no longer a status Indian. They would go to the War Veterans Benefits Office, and they would say, oh, you're an Indian, you're dealt with differently, and they'd end up in this sort of Jordan's principle policy vacuum.
Double humiliation.
Yeah. But you ask them, why would you do that? Why would you go knowing that you were going to lose your status? And they would say, well, we had this treaty with this country, and we're pretty sure this country is going to live up to this treaty. We're not sure anybody else will. So we felt it was still important to go and do that, even though, there was probably going to be a consequence.
And you're 150 years later still waiting for the country to live up to its treaty obligations.
Yeah. And I think, it's starting to happen. A lot of the modern treaties are very positive. Think about the Niska Treaty, 2000 Royal Assent. Very, very positive. We don't hear anything about it, which to me it's working. They're doing a good job. And
you just gave the example of war veterans. The Indian Act also enforced enfranchisement, in other words, the loss of status, of any First Nation admitted to university. Why would that have been the case?
Again, they're thinking, no, they're probably fitting in a little bit better than the other ones. So if they get a university degree, that should be grounds for taking them off of the list. Yeah.
The Indian Act could expropriate portions of reserves for roads, railways, and other public works, as well as to move an entire reserve away from a municipality if it was deemed expedient.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that one?
Pretty crazy. They did do a lot of relocations. People were moved sometimes hundreds of kilometers away from where they originally were from. You look at a lot of reserves across the country, a lot of them are taken up by utilities and right-of-way corridors and roads. And so I think that's, sort of where things have shaken out. There were stuff in the Indian Act I don't want to take away from some of the ones that are coming out, but we didn't want them to farm. They weren't allowed to sell stuff off the reserve, and so we stopped them from prohibited them from participating in the economy, and then said, by the way, you're not using their lands to their highest and best use. We're gonna lease those to other enterprising entrepreneurs who would do that.
You'll help me with my memory here, but I think I saw a quote in here from former Prime Minister Arthur Meehan, who said, they're not going to cultivate the land the way we want to, so we'll do it, and they'll just sit tight. Essentially that.
Yeah. So it was quite a system, really designed, like I say, to assimilate. Initially it starts off nicely. Dying race of people, they're not fitting in militarily and economically. But as they are not assimilating, we get more and more aggressive just in terms of Indian Act legislation.
Well, since you answered this next question, but I'll put it out here on the record. The Indian Act could lease out uncultivated reserve lands to non-First Nations if the new leaseholder would use it for farming or pasture. Okay, you just spoke to that.
Yeah.
Here's the next one. The Indian Act forbade First Nations from forming political organizations.
Yeah.
How do you get away with that?
You cannot meet in groups of 3, and the Indian agent actually was their job to make sure that if they knew of a gathering of groups of 3 or more, would be in attendance and would definitely let you know the rules of the game. There's a tribal political organization in British Columbia today who still sings Onward Christian Soldier at the start of the meeting because they could meet for religious purposes, approved religious purposes. Yeah.
Now, some of these, we should say, have obviously been changed over time.
Yes.
Some of them, I think 1951 is a date when many of them were not given the force of law anymore. I mean, do you have any idea off the top of your head when First Nations were allowed to convene for political purposes?
I think that would have been right in the era, 1951, and
Yeah.
it's sort of on the, what I've been told is it's on the heels of World War II. They were fighting alongside. There was a softening of attitudes, from people that were really fighting alongside. So,
Let's go through a few of them here because some of these are self-explanatory. The Indian Act prohibited anyone, First Nation or non-First Nation, from soliciting funds for First Nation legal claims without a special license from the Superintendent General. Obviously, an inhibition against First Nations pursuing their rights.
Yeah.
It prohibited the sale of alcohol to First Nations, prohibited the sale of ammunition to First Nations. Here's one. It prohibited pool hall owners from allowing First Nations entrance.
Yeah,
What would be the point behind that?
Honestly, some of it I struggle with just in terms of why, and a lot of people that come to our workshops do too. Why the heck do this and, do some of that stuff? And, the short answer is it doesn't make sense unless we just look at it. We're just trying to assimilate them. And I think pool halls had a bad rap at one time, that they were just places where not good people went and...
You'd be up to no good if you're in a pool hall.
Pretty much.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, here's one that has obviously had profound repercussions for decades and decades and decades. The Indian Act imposed the band council system.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So when we think about Indigenous cultures at the time of contact, and contact happens at different times and different places. On the East Coast, there's 500 years of contact. On the West Coast, maybe 130 years of contact. So it just happens at different times. But at the time of contact, there were already governing institutions. We think about Ontario here. You've got the Haudenosaunee, or Six Nations, as they're commonly called. Quite a sophisticated political institution in its own right. It's made
just
possible.
an hour and a half west of here.
Yeah, and it's made possible by agricultural activities. They grew crops and they could support huge populations of people, really small area. And whenever you have a lot of people in a small area, you need to develop mechanisms to work out the disputes. But the federal government said, we can't let them keep governing themselves the way they're governing themselves. They have to elect a chief and council. And not only that, because it's part of an assimilation process, they say, oh, and we're only going to give you 2 years. We're going to give you a chief and council for every 100 members. You got 321 members, 1 chief and 2 council members. We're going to give you 2-year election cycles because we want you to become familiar with this assimilation process. And they're elected by their people, but they're accountable to Indian affairs. And that's the part that drives them endlessly crazy and why they're saying we need to move away from the Indian Act and into self-government. And that can mean maybe going back to the traditional ways. It can mean adopting an electoral format that's more in line with how they're doing stuff at that particular community level. I've seen blends of both. We've got the traditional sort of Lisms government of the Niska Nation, and then they elect a president, so we can see lots of different sort of ways that communities are tackling that piece.
I'm going to read the next 4 together because they all deal with culture in a huge way. The Indian Act forbade First Nations from speaking their native language. The Indian Act forbade First Nations from practicing their traditional religion. The Indian Act forbade Western First Nations from appearing in any public dance, show, exhibition, stampede, or pageant wearing traditional regalia. And the Indian Act declared potlatch and other cultural ceremonies illegal. What, in your view, is that tantamount to?
I think, they really are getting aggressive now. They're trying to take away the culture. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, I think, came up with the best words. That government commission said, well, we just look at just the experience of residential schools. It's really a cultural genocide. We're trying to kill the Indian within the child was sort of the thought process. So it really was an attempt to take away the culture. And I don't know, I'm not an expert, but as soon as you tell people they can't be who they are, that's a pretty tough road to plow, even with government legislation and that kind of stuff.
The other thing is often when you tell people you can't be this, they're going to redouble their efforts to ensure that they are this.
Double down. Yeah. And so the Indian Act was, I think, you look at it over its history, it was starting to double down more and more, and they were responding in kind. We would have our potlatches in the middle of winter. So we had a potlatch in 2014. My dad's basically coaching, mentoring, teaching me how to take over his responsibilities. And we're sitting with a bunch of chiefs in a house in Alert Bay, British Columbia, overlooking the ocean. And one of the chiefs says to my dad, "Oh, beautiful day for a potlatch, Bobby Joe. Look at how windy it is. The Indian agent can't get here." And so we all had a good sort of chuckle about, some of the banning of potlatches and cultures and regalia and speaking the language. We're definitely getting aggressive at that point as a country in the 1920s. And you could go into very prominent museums and see stuff that, when you go into the Northwest Coast display section, collected in 1921. Actually, it wasn't collected, it was confiscated, and there's probably somebody out there that believes they own it and want to repatriate it. And there is actually a big process of repatriation. Museums have been cooperating with communities to return things.
Here's another one on political rights. The Indian Act denied First Nations the right to vote.
Yeah.
Now, we know most Canadians could vote as of 1867, males. Women as of 100 years ago, non-Indigenous, that is.
Yeah.
There are First Nations in this country who got the right to vote in 1961.
Yeah.
I mean, that's in the lifetime of, I suspect, most of the people watching us right now.
Yeah.
Is that why there is so much mistrust among First Nations for settler elections?
I think there's mistrust and maybe some apathy. The reason they couldn't vote, I think that's the interesting part. It was like women in suffrage. You were not considered a person. An Indian was anybody other than a person. That's what the Indian Act would have said. And so, somebody took a look at it and said, no, they're persons. They should be able to vote. And so, the big challenge, we think about the Mississaugas of the New Credit here, and the Haudenosaunee and the Huron-Wendat. Mississaugas are just a small group of people up against the GTA. It's hard to get political power at the polls when you're just a small group of people. So I think, some of that might be sort of apathy. Some of it is definitely instrument of the man. We don't want to do what the man's telling us to do. And but when we look at this last federal election just a few years ago, Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Perry Bellegarde, published a paper. And he actually identified 42 ridings where First Nations bands could swing the election from one political party to another, especially if they're going to be close. So we did see some real uptake from Indigenous peoples in that last federal election. I think there's 9 Indigenous members of Parliament. It was probably the most engaged that they've ever been. You know, a lot of it had to do with government cutbacks. They were trying to find some way to not be cut back so heavily, and a bunch of political objectives there. I should say the Inuit, who are 68,000 of the 1.4 million self-identified Aboriginal peoples, are the most effective in elections. We look at the previous, the Harper government. We had an Inuk gal who was the Environment Canada minister.
Right.
So they run people in all parties up in the north, and they can put people onto the front bench, pulling on the, sort of the political power lever. So they're like the most organized when they're the smallest group of Indigenous peoples in the country. The most recent federal fisheries minister, Tutu. And then the Métis were always considered citizens, and they were able to vote in federal, provincial, and local elections. So that's...
Since you mentioned, before I get to the last two, before I go on with that, Stephen Harper gave an historic apology for the residential school system that had been foisted upon Indigenous people going back many, many years. And, the apology's in the book, and I read it, and they sound like very sincere, heartfelt, important, meaningful, historic words.
Yes.
Do you take them that way?
Yeah, totally. And I should confess, my dad is very involved in reconciliation and bringing the residential school story to light. He actually was one of maybe 4 people that had a hand in helping write the speech as it went into the House of Commons sort of the next day. And he's told me personally quite a few of the words that I put in there managed to get through to the Prime Minister and actually be read out, which he thought was great. There's a real commitment there by Prime Minister Harper. It was kind of a surprise. We always thought maybe it would happen with a different political stripe, but you know what, it was still a good point.
You found that impressive.
Yeah.
And yet a few pages later in the book, you go on to say, well, he did say this other thing here once, and I wonder whether the apology, therefore, is as sincere as we thought. What was the other thing he said?
I don't know what he said. You'll have to remind me.
Well, okay, it was about I think it was about the G20, when he said Canada is ideally positioned to deal with a lot of the issues facing the world today because we have no history of colonialism here.
Oh, okay, yes. Yeah, we actually have a lot of history, and so that's a neat thing too. I do these workshops all the time, all levels of government, and sometimes even politicians. And one of the exercises I give to people to do is I say, come up with a date in history and a sentence to describe it that's specific to Indigenous peoples. And if I have a class of 30 people, we'll come up with 20, 30 dates, and I'll start to flip chart it. And what you find is there's a lot of dates early, Louis Riel and, dates like that. There's a lot of recent dates, the Patrioted Constitution and Oka and things like that. But every time in the timeline exercise, there's this big gap in the middle, and it's from the late 1800s to the late 1960s, and it's uncanny. I can even show you pictures, but it's just uncanny that this gap always comes up. And when I'm debriefing, I'll say to the participants, "What do you notice?" Big gap. And so I think, for a lot of Canadians, they just don't know about this particular piece of history, the Indian Act.
They're learning now.
Wasn't really taught.
Bob, we promised people 21 things, and we're going to get all 21 in, because here comes 20. The Indian Act created a permit system to control First Nations' ability to sell products from farms, self-explanatory. And the last one here, the Indian Act is a piece of legislation created under the British rule for the purpose of subjugating one race, Aboriginal people. I'd like to know, all these years after the passage of the Indian Act, how well ultimately do you think it's done at doing that?
It didn't. In fact, and people will debate this a lot. If we want people to assimilate, you don't put them on separate lands than everybody else. If you want them to assimilate, you don't put them onto separate laws than everybody else. So that's like the biggest mistake, right? Is that we tried to tried to do that piece. And the fact that they're living under separate lands and on separate laws will always keep them separate. It's just a legislative thing that's really hard to overcome. If you want them to assimilate, you put them together and we share food and we share religious, spiritual ideas and humor and all kinds of things like that.
So they went about it stupidly to begin with.
It's just when hindsight's always 20/20, right? If you look back, why would you do that, right? I mean, if you would have just sort of left people be, that would have probably been a better place. And you know, when we look at it in the context of the history of the country, it's sort of, I think of this conversation dismantling the Indian Act as a battle for the soul of the nation. And when we started, the soul of the nation really was about equality and equity. And, you know, we'd bring all of these different cultures in from all over the world and we'd put them in a big pot and we'd, you know, turn the heat on and we'd stir it and it'd be this gray, goopy mass of people. And so that was sort of the melting pot ideology that would have been in place in the United States and Canada and maybe other sort of countries like that. But, you know, I think that's not really what we are. If I look at all of the different cultures in Canada, not just Indigenous peoples, we're more of a cultural fruitcake than we are a melting pot society. And so,
well, I can't say your Indigenous name, but I will thank Bob Joseph.
Thank you
for coming on the agenda tonight and sharing with us 21 things you may not know about the Indian Act that will help Canadians make reconciliation with Indigenous peoples a reality. Thank you so much, Bob.
My pleasure.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.